You're listening to the Business Brain Food Podcast. This is episode 123.
Welcome to the podcast that gives you direct access to the world's leading business building experts. Head to MaxMyProfit.com.au to catch up on past episodes, download your free business growth tools, and access show notes for every single episode. Now here's your host, Ben Futrell.
Well, g'day and welcome to the Business Podcast, my friend. That is the podcast dedicated to taking you and your business to the next level. And the good news is, doesn't matter whether you're brand new to this business thing, so maybe you're just kicking off your business idea and scratching your entrepreneurial itch. And if that is the case, you're going to love today's episode. Or maybe you're like myself and you've been in business for a long, long time. And you've got the scars and wounds to prove it. Feeling a bit silly today. Intro, but there you go. Feeling good, I've got to say. Feeling good, eh? What a hot summer. We've had a hot summer here in Australia. If you're not from Australia, you probably wouldn't know. You may have heard it. But you know what gets me is how people make such a fuss about a hot day. It's summer, people. It's summer. It's supposed to be hot. Get over it. Deary me. But it has been warm. I will give you that. It's been warm. It's been unusually warm on particular days, but it's not the first time. Certainly not the first time. I love the way the media hypes it up as if something crazy is going on. Anyway, that's enough of that ranting on about that. Now, if you're a first-time listener to the Business Brain Food Podcast, I want to say welcome. Thanks so much for joining. And, definitely if you're a startup, and maybe that's why you found this episode, because today I am talking to John Livesay, who is an amazing guy, who, he authored a book called The Successful Pitch about how to fund your startup. So how to go out and raise money and what to do, what not to do. He's got an amazing process for helping people raise money. So if you are brand new to business and brand new to the podcast, welcome along. Today's going to be awesome for you. If you're, if you're not in a startup, you may be thinking, well, should I listen to this episode? I want to say yes. Because I know as I interviewed John, I wrote down a heap of notes about how I could tell or how I could sell my idea, even if it is just to prospective customers. Right? It doesn't have to be to an investor. So the stuff that John runs through is priceless in helping you being able to articulate what it is you do in a way that makes people want to buy from you or be involved in what it is you do, or gets people inspired and enrolled in your vision. It'll help you recruit people. It'll help you get investors. It'll help you do whatever, to grow your business. So yes, if you're brand new to business, fantastic. Brand new to the podcast, thanks for tuning in. If this is your 123rd episode that you've listened to, welcome back. Welcome back. So good to have you back. I do love bringing you the podcast every single week, and glad that you've come back to listen again. Now, before I do get stuck into chatting with John about raising money for your startup, and I'll give John a bit more of a formal introduction very shortly. Before I do that, I just wanted to remind you of a couple of things that are coming up that are pretty exciting. In about a week from today. So if you're listening to this on the release date, which some of you will be, some of you won't be, but the release date being the 22nd of Feb. In just over a week, I start my Eastern Seaboard of Australia tour, where I'll be in Brisbane, Sydney and Melbourne running my brand new 2-hour workshop, which is free for business owners, where I'm going to take you through my five stages of business growth. And one of the things I've learned over the last 15 years of helping hundreds of businesses in dozens of different industries is that most businesses have all businesses have some things in common, and I've been able to build a blueprint, a business acceleration blueprint that will help you take your business to the next level. Will give you a step-by-step structured approach to building your business, with checklists, etc. So I'm going to share that 5-stage business acceleration blueprint with you during this Eastern Seaboard tour. It's called Business Fast Track. You can go to businessfasttrack.com.au for dates and venues, and I'd love to see you there. Now, if it is after March, because this is throughout March I'm doing that, if you're listening to this after March 2017, go to that domain anyway, and you'll probably find that I may be running another series of workshops somewhere. It may not be the same series, but I'll definitely be somewhere appearing live where we can catch up, and hopefully I can help you take your business to the next level, because that, my friends, is what this is all about. So businessfasttrack.com.au, go there and check out venues, register yourself, and I hope to see you there. All right, so I wanted to tell you a bit about John. One of the reasons I got John Livesay on the show was after 122 episodes, we've had some amazing guests, but we've had nobody that is just focused as a professional on helping people fund their business. And one of the biggest challenges I think people are faced with, definitely in startups these days, is they get sort of, I guess, mesmerised by the whole startup funding options that are out there. And we talk a bit about that in this interview. We talk about the crowdfunding, which is that reward-based funding. We talk about angel investing. We talk about Shark Tank. We talk about how can you go about raising money for your startup, and what are the important things you need to think about. Because I think as a result of having this chat with John, I feel that a lot of people in startups are actually going into the whole funding thing in the wrong way. They're going about it the wrong way. They're making some pretty critical mistakes. In fact, John Livesay in this interview is going to share with you the 3 top mistakes that young startup companies make when trying to raise money and they're pitching their product to an investor. The 3 top mistakes. And this guy, let me tell you, this guy knows what works and what doesn't. He's been in this field now for a long time. He's got 20 years of experience, and he's spoken to some amazing investors, angel investors. He's spoken to people that have been successful at pitching. He knows what works and doesn't work. So he's going to share with you the 3 mistakes that people are making that is costing them getting funding, and he's going to also share with you what you should be doing if you want to get funding. Absolutely amazing. Now, John Livesay is a top sales expert. He's been a funding strategist with over 20 years of experience. He hosts the Successful Pissed. That's not very good. It's funny because he talks about how he mispronounced it sometimes. The Successful Pitch Podcast. That's actually quite a mouthful, John, I've got to say. He hosts the Successful Pitch Podcast with investors from around the world. So make sure you're obviously a podcast listener. Go and find his podcast on iTunes and tune in if you want to hear some amazing interviews with investors from around the world. He's also the pitch mentor for startfast.net, which is the #1 accelerator in upstate New York. So, he comes with a lot of credentials. He gives startups the pitch secret to become irresistible to investors. Not just pitch their idea, but to be irresistible. And when he works with startups, they become master storytellers. And you're going to learn that through today's interview, that being a master storyteller means that you can inspire investors to join your team. He's been featured all over the place, Entrepreneur, Inc. magazine, and as a bonus, he's also authored a book called The Successful Pitch, which are conversations on going from invisible to investable, which I think any young startup should definitely read, because that's what it's all about, is making people get aware of what you do and really excited about investing in what you do. So without any further delay, let's get John onto the Business Brain Food podcast.
Business Brain Food.
So a hot topic that I've been asked about many times from listeners is about how to raise funding for your startup idea. And so we've searched far and wide, and we've found one of the most amazing experts on the topic of raising money and funding your startup. I'm really happy to have John on the podcast. Welcome to the Business Brain Food podcast, John.
Thanks, Ben. It's great to be with you.
Absolute pleasure, mate. Well, the pleasure is mine. If, like all guests, we start with the same question, and that is for you to share something quirky about yourself.
It's time for something quirky. And now, something quirky.
I've been known to go to New York City and see 5 Broadway shows in 3 days.
Wow. How do you manage to do that? You must see the matinee and the evening slot, or how do you do 5 in 3 days?
Exactly. Yes. Well, I get in Thursday at 5 and I run to the theater. So that's the first night, then Friday night, and then there's 2 on Saturday and then 1 on Sunday, and fly home.
Wow. So it must be something that you really love is the Broadway shows.
It is, yeah. It's there's nothing like New York except maybe London, but that's too far to go. But it's one of my favorite things to do, is to just totally escape into that world of creativity.
A lot of Aussie listeners right now extremely jealous, let me tell you. Because for us to go to New York is a little bit longer flight than what you've got.
Yes,
yeah.
5 hours. Yeah. Right.
Anyway, we could talk about Broadway. We could talk about how close you are to New York, making everyone jealous because you can get to go to see 5. I mean, for us to see one's hard. But we're not here for that. What we're here is to talk about raising money for your next startup. Now, before we do that, I always love to hear a bit about how you got to where you are. What got you involved in being a funding strategist?
Well, I sold advertising for over 15 years at Condé Nast, which publishes Wired and GQ and Vanity Fair and Vogue and W and several other brands. And I was selling print and digital and video across those brands. And then in the corporate division, they asked me to work with startups that they could possibly use to help monetize and solve some of the problems that they didn't have the technology to use. One of them was a startup called Haul Stars, Haul, which created a shoppable video player. And he came in and pitched it, and it was so confusing, Ben, and so complicated that nobody understood it. And I realized, there's a problem here. So I said to the people at style.com, let me work with them. And I said, look, the problem you're solving is no one's clicking on a static banner ad. We're going to create a video of a day in the life of a fashion blogger, and people can click right on the video and buy the clothes right off the video. And therefore, the advertiser will get a return on their investment, and style.com will be able to keep the ad budget allocated that's about to go away if they don't start delivering an ROI. And so when we explained that concisely and clearly, style.com said, yes, go talk to the client, see if they'll buy it. I went with him and the rep, and the AG Jeans client said, this is exactly the kind of thing we were looking for. We didn't even know this existed. They sold $30,000 worth of jeans in 5 days. So he had proof of concept, style.com, got to keep the client, and I got the start to my idea to start a business, which was to help specifically tech CEOs who are not good storytellers tell a story so that they could get customers and get funded.
Yeah, awesome. Now, they've actually dubbed you as the pitch whisperer. Do you like being called the pitch whisperer?
I love being called the pitch whisperer. And let me tell you why, Ben, because everyone needs to have something that intrigues people to say, that's interesting. Tell me more. So, for example, people say, well, I know what a horse whisperer is, but what's a pitch whisperer? And I'll say, well, a pitch whisperer answers the 3 unspoken questions that everybody has no matter what you're pitching. When the first one is, do I trust you? Which is a gut thing. And that's really our fight or flight response that kicks in. That's where the handshake came from, Ben, is to show you didn't have a weapon. And then it goes into the heart, which is, do I like you? And, increasing your likability, doctors spend more time with patients they like, teachers spend more time with students they like. One of my clients, Gensler, which is a big architectural design firm around the world, they were told by a client, look, we're going to pick the person who we like the best because the project lasts 5 years, not necessarily who has the best design. So you really need to work on your trust factor, your likability factor, and then it goes into the head, which is, will this work for me? Will I get a return on investment? All that good stuff. So I completely flipped the script. As most people say, oh, people have to know, like, and trust you before they hire you. And I said, no, it's the other way around. They have to trust, like, and know you.
Yeah, quite important, isn't it? I think, it's interesting what you just said there is that it's not always about having the best design, and you talk about storytelling. And I see a lot of startups, and you must say this all the time, a lot of startups struggling to get people to back them. Do you think it is because they're too worried about building the perfect product before they get the story right?
Correct. I tell startups, people remember your stories, not your numbers. And the big mistake I see a lot of people make when they pitch to get funded is thinking that the investor is a customer. And if you're given typically 10 minutes to pitch in front of an angel group, which is a group of people that are accredited to invest in startups, you don't want to waste 5 minutes of it showing how cool your app is or whatever the product does, because that's not what investors are investing in. They're investing in the jockey, not the horse. So you're the jockey and your idea is the horse, because that idea will probably change before it actually gets to market, or certainly pivot a little bit. So that's the big aha, is people are investing in you. Why you and why now?
Yeah, okay. And I think a lot of startups need to hear that, because they love what they're doing, don't they? Right? They've just created this brand new app or product, right, or service, and they love it so much they just want to talk about that. But that's not what's going to get them the funding, is it? So tell us a bit about what you feel is the best way to pitch a product. I mean, you've got 10 minutes in front of, as you said, an angel group. What are some of the key things you need to make sure you pack into that 10 minutes to get the best result?
Well, you're given 10 minutes, but you really only have 90 seconds to grab their attention and pull them into your story emotionally and make sure that they instantly understand what it is you do. Because if you start talking and confuse people, the confused mind always says no. So you need to have a really strong opening that grabs their attention. Ideally, it talks about who you're helping and what problem you're solving and how big the market is and why you're personally the right person to execute this idea, all within 2 or 3 sentences to make them say, that sounds like a potential thing. I want to know more. And then you go into the detail.
And what do you find? What is it that, I mean, you see these shows like Shark Tank and that, right? And that gives people this. I don't know. Do you think that's a true representation of how investors want to be pitched, or do you think that's it's reality TV and we should ignore it?
No, there's some valuable things in there, definitely. A lot of it's edited down for television, and some of the drama is heightened because you should be interviewing the investors as much as they're interviewing you. Right? It's because you want to work with people that you like and trust in your company, and you should be able to define what your culture is and feel like those people have something to contribute. So I think the key factor is that rarely does someone make an offer after just hearing you pitch for 10 minutes. The whole goal of the pitch is to get another meeting, to go into more detail and for them to get to know you as a person before you start getting offers like you do on TV.
Yeah, because it happens pretty quickly on the Shark Tank, doesn't it? But that's not what's real. Well, it may happen in real life, but it's unlikely, isn't it?
Well, yes. And even on Shark Tank, they still will do their due diligence and back out of what they offered you on camera if they find something out about what you said not being true.
Yeah. Okay. So what sort of things do you think investors are looking for when you're pitching them? Is it just return on investment or a hole in the market? What are they looking for? Have you got like a checklist or something for startups that they can use?
There's a big checklist, but the first thing is your team. Your team is everything. Who's on your team? Why are they uniquely qualified to execute this? Have they worked together before? Do any of the members have a successful exit from another company that they've returned investors their money? People love that. And after the team, then it becomes how big is the market, and what problem are you solving that hasn't been solved before? In other words, that you've done your own due diligence to make sure that there's not something out there like it, and that you have a unique barrier to entry to competition just coming in and taking everything away.
Yeah. Okay. And do you think, how important is it that they like you? Because are they relying on your concept or your idea, or do they really put a lot of value in the individual themselves that's got the idea that's going to build the business or promote the business?
Well, one investor I interviewed on my podcast, a successful pitch, said I look for 5 things. The first 3 are team, team, and team. So, yeah, it's really about the person and their mindset and their tenacity and their perseverance and their vision and how they think. Those are the things that they really care about.
Yeah. And what if somebody, like I know a lot of startups, small business, like I said, tech CEOs aren't great at communicating stories. And a lot of them don't have those, communication or presenting skills that you may need to stand in front of an investor and give a pitch. Have you got some tips for people that may be a little bit, I don't know, shy or fearful or lacking confidence?
Yes, I tell people you have to sell yourself, but forget selling and tell stories instead. So once you start telling a story, people tend to be engaged because a good story has, some obstacles to overcome. It's memorable. It's entertaining. So if we can learn to teach people how to become storytellers, for example, what's the story of origin? How did you come up with the idea for this product? Ideally, again, it's some problem you experienced and decided to fix. Or, you can tell the story of why you're so passionate and why you want to make a difference with this product as well as have it make money. So those are the things that people look for. Or if you have a customer, telling a story of why they're so happy.
So stories are always the way to go. Because I think what we do as individuals, we look at some of these very successful entrepreneurs that may be investing, and they call it the Shark Tank as if you're going to get bitten, don't they? But I think it actually gives it a bit of a negative connotation, in my opinion. But I think when people are investing, it is about building a relationship still, isn't it? It's no different than any other sale.
Yes, it is a sale, and you're selling yourself, your team, how big your market is, why you have the right solution. And the other thing to really look at, Ben, is why now? For example, Uber would not have been successful if we all didn't have, the majority of us anyway, have smartphones, right?
Yeah.
Or Airbnb, is that down there in Australia too?
Yeah, it's smashing it down here, yeah. If the economy wasn't bad back in 2008 or so, people would not have been willing to rent out a room or their home to a stranger. So the timing is very important.
You can't be too early or too late to the market when you're pitching for investors.
Yeah, that's a good tip. Is make sure, because timing is everything in a lot of things, isn't it? Especially timing in the economy or in the business opportunity. What are some? Have you got some stories of examples? Talking about stories, I'm sure you've spoken to a stack of investors on your podcast. You've probably spoken to people that have pitched investors. What's the craziest thing you've seen or heard that's worked? To allow someone or get someone funding.
Well, one of the exercises I have my clients do is stack their moments of certainty. And what that means is you write down 4 or 5 times when you knew you nailed it, right? You asked somebody out on a date, you got a second date. You interviewed for a job, you got the offer, whatever it is. That's what you put in your head before you get in front of the investors to pitch, so your confidence goes up. So one of my clients, Martin, said, well, that was really powerful for me, because what came up for me was I remember this time that while I was born in South America, I grew up in the Netherlands. And when I turned 18, my parents took me back to South America and dropped me off naked in the Amazon jungle to survive for 2 weeks, because in my culture, that's the rite of passage into manhood. So that was a moment of certainty. I said, whoa, that gives me goosebumps. I said, all right, let's work on that. So I said, what lessons did you learn in the Amazon jungle, Martin? He said, well, I learned how to focus and pivot, persevere. I said, fantastic. We're going to take those lessons from the Amazon jungle into the concrete jungle of being an entrepreneur. And when he had that practice and honed, he won a pitch contest and got funded, because the investor said, I'm going to put my money on the guy who survived the Amazon jungle. He'll survive anything that comes up along in his startup.
Yeah, and that's a great example, because two weeks in the Amazon jungle naked would not be an easy thing to survive.
No. And so there's some lessons there that bring it to life. So that's a really great example of a good story, and it's memorable. And you don't have to have something quite that dramatic, but let's take a minute, if you don't mind, and break down why that story works.
Yeah,
that'd be useful?
Yeah, that'd be good. That'd be great.
So every story has 3 basic components: the exposition, the problem, the solution, and actually there's a 4th one, which is the resolution. So if we look at that story of Martin, the exposition is he's 18 years old, he's naked in the Amazon jungle, right? But sometimes when he was practicing, he would forget to say that it's a rite of passage in his culture to do this. I said, if you don't say that, Martin, it sounds like child abuse, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So exposition is very important to paint a picture. That's what you're doing. So tell us where we are. What we know. Is it hot? Is it cold? Whatever's going on, right? Then the problem is, he's got to figure out how to survive naked for 2 weeks. He's at his right. The solution is he does it, takes some life lessons, and then has a great story about his own tenacity and grit that he uses at a pitch contest. And the resolution is he wins the pitch contest and gets his startup funded because of that experience.
So I guess for anybody listening, if they do have a story, is it worthwhile sitting down and scripting that out and working out how you're going to pitch it, or is it something you should just tell?
Both. You want to practice it enough so that it sounds conversational, but you want to practice it so that you don't forget key parts, like this is a rite of passage in my culture.
Yeah, because like you said, if you didn't say that, it does sound like it's just some sort of child abuse that you're getting pushed through. Right. Is where when it's a rite of passage, it actually sounds like it's a challenge that's put before everybody that's in that culture, and
exactly.
And by overcoming it, you've actually you've achieved something great. And I can see how that would make that particular person, no matter what their concept or idea was, that particular person would be more attractive to an investor than somebody that hadn't done that.
Right, because they're looking for certain characteristics. Are you trustworthy? Are you someone that's got grit? Do you persevere when you have obstacles? You want to tell a story that shows that, as opposed to just standing up there and saying that about yourself.
Yeah, because I think when what do they say? When you're saying it, you're bragging, and so if you can show it, it's different. It's I can't remember the saying, but it's very important that you can articulate that without actually sounding like you're just pumping your own tires up.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah, great stuff. I just want to shift gears a little bit, because a lot of people are probably going, okay, it's great to know how to pitch or to be able to pitch in a way that makes me attractive or gets me the funding. One of the other things I know a lot of people struggle with, I've been asked this question many times, is where do you go for funding? How do you find these people? Have you got any tips for startups that are looking for funding, where they go?
Yes. There's a whole new law in America, May of last year, that allows people to get funding from non-accredited investors, which typically there's a group of investors called angels, and then there's venture capitalists. And you have to, have a high net worth to be an angel investor. So now there's something called equity crowdfunding. And one of the platforms I'm involved with is called dreamfunded.com. And you can apply, and if you get accepted, then people can put anywhere from $100 to $1,000 into your startup to get a percentage of equity to help you get the product to market or to help you, get funded to scale. So that is a great way to get funding. And then, of course, warm introductions to investors is always the preferred way of getting in front of them. So you have to learn how to work your network.
Yeah, and we've seen an increase of these online crowdfunding, platforms where you can go and just put your idea up and get funded through many people, putting their hand into their pockets. Is that something
Yes.
that you advise doing? Is that a good way to go? Is to do it that way rather than finding one big angel investor?
Well, it depends on where you are in the process, right? There's nothing wrong. It's now a totally acceptable way. I don't want to get people confused and say, oh, should I try Kickstarter or Indiegogo, which is rewards-based crowdfunding, which raises much smaller amounts of money. And there's nothing wrong with that either if it gives you proof of concept that, A, people want what you're selling and are willing to pay for it. But this equity crowdfunding platform is a more sophisticated way of getting some traction and getting some. And sometimes, certain angels will say, okay, you've raised this much money from equity crowdfunding, and now we'll do the next round. So it helps get you some credibility.
Yeah, because I'm guessing too that if you are going to use one of those platforms like Kickstarter or GoFundMe or whatever it might be, that you still need to follow the same principles to get people to invest.
Yes, it's still about telling a clear and concise and compelling story of why you and why now and what makes this unique and how it's going to, the market has to be big enough for their investors to get a big return on their investment.
Yeah. And from your experience, what do you think the benefits are in going to a more sophisticated route like the angel investor or a board of investors over something like the GoFundMe, Kickstarter type things?
Well, it's sometimes fewer people in the decision process. If you have an angel group, typically, or one angel that wants to fund the whole thing. But you have to really know and like and trust that person because you're going to be in a relationship with them for quite a while. So if it's a little more spread out among multiple angels or multiple people funding you without having to give up too much equity, then that's a little bit better way to go sometimes. Because there's something called dumb money and smart money. You don't want to just take money from anybody. You want to have money from people who have connections to help you grow and that are going to be with you through the tough times and not start panicking and pointing fingers.
Great, yeah, because that was my next question is, because money is one currency, isn't it? But there are other currencies involved in this process.
Yes. And that's what good angels groups will talk about is we have connections to help you scale or, we have connections to help you get customers sooner than others. So there's a lot to be said for good investors with good connections.
Yeah, but they're typically going to want a bigger slice of the pie, though, aren't they, in return for that? Because it's a currency.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Because typically, with Kickstarters and these crowdfunding sites, I'm not 100% familiar with how they work, but I don't think they take a percentage of the business, do they? You're pre-ordering a product at a lower price, typically.
Yes, typically, yes. Or they give you some kind of prize or reward or T-shirt or something. Yeah, it's more rewards-based than equity-based.
Yeah, That's where your angel investor is going to want an equity. Would a benefit be typically, from your experience, having been involved in the industry for a while and no doubt seen a lot of people get funding through different angel investors, are they getting support and mentoring from these angel investors? Would that be one of the reasons you'd go down that path?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, because if you want someone who's really good, they're going, and they own a percent of your company, and they have the connections to help you grow. Then of course they're going to help you because it's now part of their company.
Yeah, yeah. And do you find? I mean, this is one of the things that I love about watching Shark Tank, and I'm always amused, John, at the numbers that they come up with. Like somebody will be turning over, they might have turned over $25,000 the first year, and they say, "I want $3 million for 10% of my company." Do you find that people get a little bit confused about what they should be asking for, as if they are looking for an investor?
Yes. If you give away too much of your company, you could end up owning less than 50% and being kicked out. If you say your valuation is too high too early on, then you lose all credibility with the investors. So your numbers have to be based on some kind of logical, thought out projections.
And so have you got any sort of thoughts or tips on that? Because I know a lot of young startups are struggling with understanding how to value what it is they've got. Because especially if they haven't started yet, or they've just got a small proof of concept, how do they go forward and go, you know what, I've got to work out what percentage to give away? Well, it sounds to me like you're saying don't give away more than half, number one, because you're going to lose control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Well, there's something called the Burkas Method, Berkus, which, looks at a lot of different things of, what's your idea? How much risk is there? Do you have a prototype or not? What kind of people do you have on your team, including any advisors? Those things can all help your valuation go up. What's the competition? Do you have any kind of traction at all? So depending on where you are and all of that, that really has a big impact as to whether your company's worth $3 million pre-revenue or $5 million. Also, where you live has an impact, just like real estate.
Yeah, okay. So that has an impact on how much or whether or not they'll invest based on where you live. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Like in Silicon Valley and New York, they tend to have higher valuations than in the middle of the country.
Okay. Okay. So that's interesting. So you may want to move house before you start pitching your product.
Well, the problem is by doing that, it's all about connections, right? So you want to be in an ecosystem like Silicon Valley, typically, that has a lot of connections and, buzz going on. And that's why it's supply and demand, right?
Yeah. Okay, interesting. What so is it best then to go and get some advice when you start to sort of work out? Before you go down that pitching path, you've got your story right, but is it best to then go get some advice about how you should pitch or what share you should be pitching or what you should be expecting as an investment?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that question? Are you asking me as a founder or an investor?
So as a founder, like if I've come up with an idea and I've got my story straight, I've gone and found out where I can go and pitch my product. It would it be a good idea for me now to go and get advice on what I should be asking or what I should be expecting? Or is that something that I'm just going to have to negotiate in the moment with the investor because every investor is different? Or how do I come up with those rules?
You should, I think, the whole process, you should get some help, right? That's why I started my business, Crack the Funding Code. One of my clients said, trying to get funded without help is like trying to climb Mount Everest without a GPS. You need a Sherpa. You need somebody who's gotten other people funded that can help you negotiate your valuation after you get the offer. There's something called fear of missing out. What we do is we get people typically multiple offers from multiple angel groups so that you can have some leverage to say, this person's offering me this much valuation versus that, but they have better connections. So there's a whole strategy to it.
Yeah, okay, because I was going to ask you about the old FOMO, the fear of missing out, because I think a lot of people jump at the first offer they get, especially if they're new to the whole concept of raising money and getting investors involved. And I've seen a lot of people very bitter is probably not the right word, but displeased or unhappy with the arrangement they've ended up with somewhere down the track when the business takes off.
Well, it's just like dating, right? You don't jump into bed typically and hope, I'm going to get married to that person, right? You want to, the average marriage lasts 7.5 years, and these investment relationships can go as far as 10 or 11. So before an exit happens, so you really want to make sure that you're, quote, jumping into bed with the right people.
Yeah, great stuff. Now, of course, we're talking about the successful pitch, but I'd love to learn. I always love to learn from people who've done it unsuccessfully. So, have you got any tips or mistakes you've seen people make that people should totally avoid?
Yes. Well, there's so many. One is, if we only get 1% of all the people who take a cab, we're going to be rich. Or if we only get 1% of all the people who live in China to buy this, we're going to be rich. That's a top-down strategy, and that's not what investors want to hear. They want to hear a bottom-up strategy, which is, we're going to take this money you're going to give us, we're going to spend this much on marketing, this much on advertising to generate leads, which will then, we'll sell the app, this many apps, or whatever it is, right? as opposed to just pie in the sky numbers. The other mistake I see people making is saying, we don't have any competition. Well, guess what? That means you don't have a market.
Yeah.
And the third mistake is asking an investor to sign a non-disclosure agreement. Oh, our idea is so secret and so important. Would you please, sign this legal document saying you're not going to share your idea? Well, you're going to get a no right off the get-go. Investors are not interested in stealing your idea. They hear over $2,500 a year, and they're not interested in signing any legal document.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So no NDAs.
Nope.
Yeah, and like you said, no competition. That's an interesting one. I've heard people say that before no one's ever thought of this before. This is a brand new idea. There's no competition. No one's doing this. And that's the instant thought I have and go, well, does anybody even want it?
Exactly. Yes. So those are the three big mistakes I hear all the time.
Yeah. Okay. And so in your pitch, then avoid those things. Tell a great story. Make sure you build that trust. Get them to like you. And if you've got some sort of proof of concept, is always going to be helpful. Do you recommend that people go and do that? At least try and get a proof of concept before you go and pitch.
Yes. So one investor told me, if you're selling dog food, I want to see the dogs eating the food.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which means it could be, as soon as this app is built, we want to use it. Or we have people using this for free as a beta, and they said that they're going to buy it after the first free month, right? Some traction, some letter of intent, something that people have said, we're going to change what we're currently doing to solve this problem and use your product because it saves us money and time or whatever the benefits are.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know we're starting to run out of time. We've got a couple more questions. What if I was raising money, how much money do you think I should ask for? Is that something you can answer? I don't even know if it is, but is it acceptable to go?
Yeah, it's a typical seed round is anywhere from, if you do friends and family, some people, raise a couple $100,000. Or if you do an actual, seed round with angel investors, you want to get enough money that will last you 12 to 18 months. So you can really hit some milestones with that money before you go out and raise your next round. So that could be anywhere from 5 to 700 to even $1 million, depending on how well thought the whole thing is and how long the money will last you.
Yeah, and typically when you're raising money, do you find that the founder has to personally guarantee it? Is it? Are they?
No.
Nope.
The investor. This is not a loan from the bank. That's when you have to personally guarantee that you're going to pay that back. This is, you're putting your house up. No, this is a risk investment that angel investors know that probably only, 1 out of the 10 are going to work. And if the company goes belly up or burns through the money before they start making a profit and go out of business, then the investor's just out their money.
Yeah, great stuff. Now, if there was a young, or no, even an older, who cares? If there was a founder out there that had a startup idea, but they just haven't had the courage to go out there and pitch their idea and make it happen, what advice would you give to them?
Make sure that you are solving a big enough problem that has a big enough market that can give investors a big enough return on their investment.
That's a good succinct bit of advice there. Nice and simple. Because I think a lot of people out there have some great ideas, but they never get off the ground. And I always say the best mousetrap doesn't sell the most, because it's not about the mousetrap, is it?
Nope, it really isn't. It's about why you and why now, and who has the most hustle to get that market share.
Yeah, great stuff. Great stuff. All right. Well, I know we're just about out of time. How can people find out more, John? Where can they go?
Well, my book is The Successful Pitch. Once I mispronounced that and someone thought it was a whole nother book, but it's Pitch with a P, and that's on Amazon. And my website is my name, John Livesay, Liv as in Victor, Esay. I'm on Twitter at John_Livesay, and you can listen to my podcast on iTunes or from my website, where I give all kinds of free content on how to make your pitch compelling and concise, and most of all, memorable.
Yeah, so you've got a weekly podcast called The Successful Pitch on iTunes, which has got some great feedback. People should probably tune into that as well if they're looking at it, because it's just about getting educated. It's about learning how to do it. Nothing is impossible or insurmountable. You just need to know how.
Exactly.
Well, mate, I can't thank you enough for coming on to the Business Brain Food podcast and sharing your knowledge with us, because it's always easy to take for granted how much knowledge you have. But it's taken you years and years and years to be able to build that knowledge, and then to be able to share it so succinctly and quickly with my listeners. I'm sure the listeners got a lot out of it, and they're really going to love the fact that they've got this extra bit of an insight in how to go raise money for their ideas. So thanks for that, mate.
You're so welcome, Ben.
All right, so the final thing for us to do is the 60-second scramble. Are you ready for that?
Let's scramble. I'm ready.
Let's do it. All right, favorite app on your phone?
Favorite app on my phone? Netflix.
If you could be any celebrity in the world, who would you be and why? Please don't say Donald Trump.
Oh, I would not. George Clooney, because not only is he handsome and talented, but he gives back.
Awesome. Do you have a hidden talent?
Have a hidden talent? Well, I don't know how hidden it is, but I really have a talent for helping people figure out what their niche is and how to tell a story.
Great stuff. What's your biggest addiction?
My biggest addiction, I would say, is art. I need to be around art in any form, whether it's shows, photography, exhibits.
Love it. What's your favorite drink?
My favorite drink? Probably, vodka and soda.
Vodka and soda. Have you got a favorite quote? Oh, last question. The bell's gone. Have you got a favorite quote you can share with the listeners?
Yes. The key to success is confidence, and the key to confidence is preparation. That's Arthur Ashe.
Ah, love it. Love it. Thanks so much, John. It's been a pleasure, mate. It's been a blast speaking to you today, and really wish you all the best in the future for yourself.
Thanks, Ben.
Learn more to earn more.
Oh, what a cool interview. I just love it when I get to speak to people with such passion about what they do. And, John Livesay is, he's just a master in his trade. He's got some great advice, very succinct and to the point. I love that. No waffle, just tells you how it is, gives you the step-by-step process. If you're confused about how to go raise money for your business after that 30 minutes, then you're in trouble, I would suggest jump onto his podcast, the Successful Pitch Podcast, which you can find on iTunes. Go and buy his book on Amazon, which is called The Successful Pitch. I think you'll love that. That's conversations on going from invisible to investable, and there's some great interviews in that book that you can read through to see how how people raised money for their startup idea and learn from that. Absolutely amazing. If nothing else, I think what John gives you, he gives you the confidence that you're able to go out there and pitch your idea, raise some money. And if you've got a good idea, that investors will listen. They'll be there. They want to be a part of it. So, thanks once again, John Livesay, for coming on the show. I highly recommend you go and check out his book and his podcast and his website. Go and check out what John's up to, because I think no matter where you're at in business, at some stage, being able to have somebody like John on your team is invaluable. And the good thing about today's technology is you can have John on your team just by subscribing to his podcast in iTunes, which is awesome. Just like I'm on your team. I'm here to help you grow your business. All right. Well, once again, I wanted to thank you for tuning into the Business Brain Food podcast, and just remind you that I've got that tour coming up on the eastern seaboard of Australia. I'll be in Melbourne, Sydney and Brisbane, and some other sort of spots in New South Wales during March. Head to businessfasttrack.com.au. That's businessfasttrack.com.au. And you'll find your local locations and times and dates. And hopefully I can see you at one of those events if you can make it. If not, if you're listening after those dates, then check the website anyway, because you never know. On a final note, I would really love it if you wouldn't mind jumping into the iTunes store. If you're enjoying the podcast, and if you're still listening, I'm assuming you should never assume anything, but if you're still listening and you haven't turned me off yet, then you may be enjoying it. Head across to iTunes, leave an honest review or rating. They all help. I read them all, and it's very encouraging. So if you could do that, that would be fantastic. Well, it's been a fantastic interview once again today. I'm glad you've joined me. I'm glad I've been able to bring it to you. Until next week, have a very profitable day. I'm Ben Futrell. You've been amazing. Cheerio.
You can fly higher than the sky, shine brighter than the stars. You can live all you ever wanted.
The Business Brain Food podcast is brought to you by MaxMyProfit.com.au, helping you outshine, outdo, and outclass your competition.